Factoring by grouping. Whenever you're given a polynomial, you can group your terms and start factoring by the GCF. Before you begin factoring by grouping, first make sure that you don't have a GCF of all the terms in the polynomial. Once you've checked for that GCF, you can move on to factor by grouping. The first thing you do is group your polynomial into two halves. Then you look at it as two separate problems. You factor out the GCF of both groups. You'll see the same thing in parentheses. If you've done it correctly, that's your new GCF, factor that out, and your solution is the product of two factors. So let's look at some examples. All right, here we have our four-term polynomial. We notice that there is not a GCF of all four terms. So let's go ahead and group our terms. So we're going to group our first two terms together and our second two terms together. Now we have two separate problems where we're just factoring out the GCF. Looking at these two terms, our GCF is 5x squared. Because 5 is the largest number that divides evenly into both 10 and 25, we observe both terms have x's. The smallest number of x's is x squared, so our GCF has x squared. And now to factor it out, we're dividing it out. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1, so we have x to the power of 1. And then divide our second term by our GCF. 25 divided by 5 is 5. And we know x squared divided by x squared is 1, or think our exponents 2 minus 2 is 0, so we don't have any x's. All right, now look at our second group. What's the GCF there? 4. Our GCF is 4. We factor out 4, and we're left with 2x plus 5. What's great about factoring by grouping is we can check ourselves at this point. We must see the same thing in parentheses. If we do not have the same thing in parentheses, we have either made a mistake picking the GCF or we've made a mistake factoring out our GCF of one of our groups. All right, we have one more step. Now we have two terms, this term and this term, and their GCF is what I've underlined, 2x plus 5. So we factor out 2x plus 5. And then whatever we're left with when we divide that out goes in our second factor. Notice how when we factor out 2x plus 5, we bring down our initial GCFs over here, making sure we're taking its sign with the terms. And that's our answer. That's how we can factor a four-term polynomial by grouping. If you want to check your answer, just double distribute. If you just double distribute here and combine like terms, if there are any, you can end up with your original problem. All right, let's look at one more factoring by grouping. All right, so here we have our first group and then our second group, making sure that we don't cut off that sign. That's a really important sign. All right, so the GCF of that first group is 2x squared. Factoring that out, we're left with 6x plus 1. Give you a second to check that. And then the GCF of our second group is negative 5. If you accidentally just factored out 5, you would have not gotten 6x plus 1 in parentheses, and then you could have remembered, oh, if my first term is negative, my GCF has to be negative. Now that we had the same thing in parentheses, we should get excited because we just factor that out and bring down what is remaining. And that's our answer.